Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Ion Live. It's your host, Joel Nelson, here with the Night Bite. Anthony Kleinwachter with me. Anthony, that intro makes you want to go and drill a bunch of holes in the lake, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not as enticing when it's like -8 outside and blowing 20 miles an hour.
Oh, for real. It's so funny. Our motivation as ice anglers. Yeah, I mean, zero doesn't bother me, especially with no wind, but you get in the negatives and a little bit of wind creeps up and everything becomes not as much fun real quick, right?
Yeah, I mean, this past Saturday it was I think 20 out and there was a breeze and it was, had that chill, that bite
Yeah,
to the wind and
yeah.
once you get moving around and, moving from hole to hole and things like that, then you guy warms up and then you start stripping layers because you're getting too hot. But yeah, that air temp and the wind, they don't always mix.
What did you see out on the ice this weekend? There must have been a ton of people out all over Minnesota. My new gig with Onyx Fish, we can kind of track user data and things like that, and just see generally how many people are using the app. And it was a record as far as people using the app. And I attribute it just to the fact that it was warmer weather. First weekend down in the metro and south where people could drive on. But I bet you just statewide throughout Wisconsin, I bet you there was just a ton of ice fishing going on.
Yeah, the lake we were on had a lot of fish houses, a lot of permanents, a lot of vehicle traffic. It is a lake that's had some, ice moving around, had some cracks and some ridges and stuff. So I know there's been a lot of people being real careful with that. I mean, we had 18 inches of ice where we were fishing. So, I mean, fairly safe for vehicle traffic, but you
Yeah.
still have to be really careful. I mean, I know a post that came out on from one of the guides where there was a crack and then another like secondary crack broke off and there was just a chunk of ice, the size of a dining table just floating and everything looked smooth. And, if you come up to a crack like that, it could be bad news. So just be really careful out there. This year's been really weird.
It's so funny. Every year that I think will be a more normal year, it seems to be more of the same, more oddball stuff. We down here had some great ice piled on, just like statewide. And then we got those warmer temps. We had almost a week of 30 to 40 some degree highs. And especially anything with movement, anything aerated, anything that never got iced over, great. Even some of it opened up a little bit again down here, but I bet you didn't have that problem in the northern parts of the state.
Yeah, not as much of that, but with the fluctuations that you're talking about, I mean, going from 40 above to 20 below, I mean, that ice is expanding and contracting so much. And I think that's what's a lot of the cause for the issues is just that ice is moving so much internally as it's expanding and contracting, creating those weak points. And so, I mean, it's definitely been a weird year for that. I feel like we've had a lot of that roller coaster temps where it's up and down. And
Yeah,
so, I mean, that doesn't help make that ice any more safe.
100%. Well, for those folks that don't know as much about you, Anthony, I've known you over the years from just the different sports shows we've gone to. You've always been an angler on social media that I've looked up to. You catch a lot of big crappies. I definitely know that about you, and big walleyes. Were you in Winnipeg already this year?
Yeah, first time I've been on Winnipeg in December and truck traffic already. So I mean, it was one of those things. The weather looked nice, and talked to a couple buddies, and it's like we made the decision at about 10 a.m. on Friday that we were going to leave after work and head up there. So
And Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were a key member of Fish Addictions and that crew with the TV show, the social following and YouTube presence that went along with it. Maybe give me a little bit of another rundown of the history of kind of your ice fishing if I've missed anything.
yeah, no, you definitely hit it there. I mean, I've been ice fishing as long as I could walk. Some of my earliest memories are up on Lake of the Woods. My dad and a good friend of his had a big permanent shack with the wood stove in it that they drag out there. And so some of my earliest ice fishing memories were up there. And then got to meet Mike through fishing and got involved with Fish Addictions. And, I attribute a lot of the, social media continuation and growth in my fishing career, I guess, to Fish Addictions because it was great. We had a great group of guys. We still all talk to each other, fish on the ice together, and get
Yep.
together. I know Mike's been really busy with family and a lot of different things, and so I mean, it's kind of taken a little bit of a backseat to just life in general. But I know he still enjoys filming and getting out. A big passion of his is getting out with his kids now, and those boys they're going to be a terror, I think, when they get to be a little bit older. How much they get after it for as much as they love it as much as he does. So yeah, it's been great. Got to meet a lot of really great people through the industry. Yourself included, and all the team at Eskimo and Ion, and just everybody in general. I mean, I know it gets talked about a lot. The industry is small. What doesn't matter what brand we're repping. We're all friends. We all talk about ice fishing and have a great time, and so it's really fun.
It's interesting taking a short trip down memory lane. When I started late 90s, early 2000s, it was a lot more contentious. There was the Blue Crew, which was real big. Clam and Ice Team was really breaking onto the scene at that point. And then there was kind of the Red Misfits, the people that ran Markham's and, just kind of wore a hodgepodge of stuff. And it was a lot more contentious. And this last decade, I've really appreciated a lot. It feels like more than ever, we're a tighter knit community. We still have the gear that we like, respected brands that we trust in different ways at different times. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun going to these shows and picking guys' brains like yourself who fishes in a different area that I'm familiar with, but I certainly don't have the experience you have on your home waters. So I think if more people just got to know some of the people in the industry, it's amazing how much they could pick up, because I learned a ton going to those shows and talking to everybody, right?
Oh yeah, I'm always learning. That's one thing that I really enjoy is just talking with people, learning new things. Trying to push myself to try new bodies of water, new techniques, target different species. It keeps it interesting, keeps it fresh. Like we talked about earlier, it's hard to go out there when it's negative and blowing out, but when you're trying something new, it's a little bit more exciting, and you never know what you might catch.
Tell me this. We were talking about wheelhouses and permanence out on the ice and driving out on the ice a little bit earlier. What is your safe zone? I mean, it's hard. I've got a half-ton truck with a 21-foot Yeti, and there's always a pucker effect. I don't care who you are or where you're going, but eventually there comes to be safe ice where you're feeling a little bit better about it, right? Is that 18-inch mark for you? Is it 14, 20?
Yeah, I mean,
What do you like?
I don't own a wheelhouse, so for me, it's a little bit different. I mean, I'm usually waiting for that 14 to 16-inch range for a truck. I know, 12 inches is probably fine, but that doesn't mean 12 inches across the entire lake. So I like that, 14 to 16, 16 plus is really, makes you feel a little bit better about things as long as you're careful. And, that's what we went up to Winnipeg. They had anywhere from 15 to 20 inches. And so, I mean, it felt pretty good with that. I mean, there's still a lot of variables that go into it. There was a lot of rough ice and moving ice up there like there always is. So, but yeah, I would say in a general rule of thumb, I'm probably a little more cautious. Why not be cautious when you can? I've got, ATV, snowmobile. I can take those out when it's less than that. So it's a little more work, but it's a lot safer.
Yeah. The older I get and the weirder stuff I see on ice, and the past 3 years, I've found bubble holes that just scare the daylights out of me. I don't know what you guys would call them. We call them bubble holes down here. They can be a spring. They can be a small seep. It's just weak ice or thin ice, or sometimes even like open water the size of like a hole that you would drill. And yeah, I found one last year in like 20 feet of water right out from a public access, 16 inches of ice all the way around, and guys driving past it with a truck. Like I said, it's about the size of a pool table. If you'd have touched near it with one tire, at least that front corner would have gone in. So that stuff keeps happening, and I keep getting scared and scared of ice.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with it's a healthy respect for the ice. I look at it that way. You have to always be careful. I mean, I get it. I get accidents happen. I know there's been a lot of people, both very seasoned anglers and, novice anglers that have had, issues with breaking through or having a vehicle go through and things like that. But I think the more you play it safe and are smart and I know there was a big post down on Mille Lacs, use those resort roads. They check the ice, use valuable information like that. Check with the bait shops. A lot of those guys are typically, pretty in the tune with what's going on. I'm always under the adage. I usually try and follow a set of tracks for a little ways and, make sure I kind of have a good path, because if there was a truck in front of me, hopefully it's a little bit safer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I always feel a little bit better when that goes down. For those of you folks joining us at home, thanks for chiming in. Thanks for the comments. I see Carlo Guzzi. Is he the chef extraordinaire and angler? Is that the same Carlo? Is that who?
Oh yeah, Carlo
Nice.
Cucina. He's got his restaurant up there on Winnipeg.
That's awesome. Very cool. Welcome, Carlo. Thanks for popping in. Jason Hunter says, "Hey guys, Half Done Outdoors has just got my eye on 10-inch. Love it." And Kelly Hendrickson dropped in to say hello as well. Thank you guys for joining us. At any point, if you have questions, we're here to chat ice, answer questions if we can, bring on new topics, like pretty much no holds barred for the most part. So feel free to drop in and post a comment at any point. He talked about a 10-inch ion, Half Done Outdoors did, and I was thinking about wheelhouse traffic as I have been here recently. I've got enough ice on local lakes. I have yet to get out with the big house. I've been out quite a bit. Like you said, snow machine, different things like that. In a house, in a permanent shack, you're drilling a 10-inch hole, aren't you, for the most part? Any reason not to?
Yeah, I would say in a permanent house, especially if you're planning to spend more than one day, you're going to get a little bit, whether it's, 30 or 30 below, you're going to get a little bit of that ice creeping in. That hole's going to get a little bit smaller overnight. So you might as well start with a 10-inch, and then, by the end of the trip, maybe you're only fishing with an 8.5-inch hole. But
Yeah.
I would definitely, anybody that's fishing in a wheelhouse, spending, more than a night in the fish house, to probably go with a 10-inch. It's nothing wrong with that. I was always a firm believer that you didn't need a 10-inch. I always used an 8-inch.
Yeah.
You can get a, 30-inch walleye, you can get a 40-inch pike up an 8-inch hole. And then, I started, it was a lot of it too was getting more holes, right? 8-inch, you're drilling a lot less ice. You had that advantage. Well, the technology has come along a ways with the 10-inch, where you're probably getting just as many holes with the, 10-inch with the turbo blades as you would have with the 8-inch, original ion. And so now I've maybe shifted my gears a little bit more to a 10-inch. And partly too, because, I'm one of the guys that's running forward facing sonar, and that takes up a lot of room in your hole. Especially if you're trying to fish out of that same hole.
I hate that. It bit me in the butt so many times. I'm sure
I know. Tell me about it.
Stories of 15-inch crappies that banged off the bottom of the. I hate that.
Yeah. So, I've kind of leaned a little bit more towards a 10-inch. Early ice and things, I'll run around with just an 8-inch and, be able to be quick and that kind of thing. But that 10-inch, it just cuts so much faster with that poly flight. It's lighter. Yeah. You can get a lot of inches and a lot of holes on a 10-inch auger these days.
And to your point, you're none the worse for the wear on weight. No. I don't even know if it's a pound difference. It's negligible. You don't feel it. Yeah. You're not. And if you're looking for that extra real estate, why wouldn't you have it when it doesn't cost you anything, right? It's like,
right.
It's just the same way. So who cares? Do you drill a little bit different in a fish house than you would in a portable, than you would on the open ice? I've got my own opinions, but I'm just interested in your thoughts, and specifically with the Alpha. I've just found some nice features, I would say, with the Alpha when drilling in a wheelhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the most overlooked feature is that variable speed trigger. We were drilling holes and being able to just such a fine tune, you barely push that button and it'll go, and it just slowly spins, and you're not throwing the shavings all over the floor. I'm pretty sure we've all used a gas auger inside of a fish house back in the day, and there's spray going everywhere.
Oh my God.
And having to deal with that. So I would say that's probably one of the most overlooked features. And it's such a fine-tuned trigger, I would say. You really have to, play with the pressure, you're pushing down on it. Sometimes it might even feel like it's going to stop, and then just slightly depress it a little bit more, and you'll just get that slow rotation, and it'll still continue to cut. I know even when we were pushing, you almost don't even have to push down. The auger just pulls itself down.
Yeah, I really like with my wheelhouse, it's kind of a scissor jack system So I'll actually lower the house just a little bit and then start holes. And to your point about that variable speed trigger, just getting it started a little bit forward is how I need to do it in my house. I'm almost drilling underneath the front lip of where the hole is to get it started. And once I get it going, then I drop the house all the way onto those holes and I finish drilling out. And I don't worry about dropping the house all the way to the deck and then drilling, because I'm not going to be augering chips everywhere as long as I'm careful. And that just, it wasn't ever, I used to know buddies that would just carry big floor squeegees like in his shop, because that was the next step after you drilled the holes in that thing, right? So kind of a
And I
crazy
would,
deal.
and anybody that's used the ion, knows about the reverse feature. I mean, you get all those shavings, you just push them all back in the hole and flush it back down. I mean, that's a pretty convenient factor instead of having to scoop out, 5-gallon pails of slush and throwing them out on the ice. I
Right,
mean,
right.
except nowadays, when there's not much snow, you might need to save some of those shavings to bank the house a little bit. It's pretty
But
thin out there.
But a pro tip, don't be dumping the slush and the shavings right in front of the door. I've seen people do that. And man, you talk about creating a skating rink for yourself every time you go to the truck. Heads up, right?
Yeah, definitely. If you're gonna do that, take some of the shavings out before you bust through. Get those dry shavings and
Yes.
spread those around, because otherwise you're dealing with a big icy mess.
Just putting a little bit of chat up here. Aiden Hudson asks, any tips on keeping the blades in the auger from freezing? It froze last time out, and I wasn't able to drill any more holes till the sun came out and the ice melted it off.
I would say the biggest tip is, once you're done drilling a hole, don't let it touch the snow. Don't touch it down to the snow. Keep it up in the air, put it on an auger rack, set it so it's propped up so it's not laying in the snow, because that wet metal on the blades, if it touches that snow, it's just going to adhere to it. And that's where you get that freeze up. So, I mean, that's probably my biggest tip.
I agree. Yeah, you touch the snow and it's just like, it's almost like magnetized to it or something. It clumps up something awful, freezes hard as a rock because all the water's still on the blades. And if there's any dripping down the flighting on top of it, it's kind of a mega pain in the butt, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, that's probably my biggest tip.
Half Done Outdoors says, I'm in Utah, where we are all tents and hubs, no wheelhouses. And I bet he's drilling 10-inch holes because he's going after trout and things like that, which, I mean, I don't know what it is about, rainbows. I've cut browns through the ice. Lakers, they all freak out at the hole, especially. Has that been your experience too with trout? Lakers, especially, I bet, right?
Yeah, Lakers, and then last year was one of the first times I fished for rainbow trout, and I mean, those things are just a ball of fury. I mean, if you've ever watched them underneath the ice, they're just rolling and wrapping, and it's a ball
Everywhere.
of flurry. Lakers no different. I mean, they're so powerful. I mean, even once you get them close to the hole, they'll take off. But yeah, having a bigger hole, and I know even for the rainbows, when we were fishing them, we drilled double or triple holes just so you could almost get them out. And I know guys will even bring a little stream trout landing net to try and do a quick landing of them, because they're impossible to hold on to.
Yeah, no doubt. Trout are I find they're hard to hook too. Like, it's such a pain in the butt. I mean, I know why automatic fishermen are created, those slammers, because trout will like do this flyby deal. They'll almost like bump and nip the bait. Not Lakers. Now Lakers, they'll if they'll go back and get a running start just to hit it harder,
Yep.
But like rainbows and stuff, like they'll just bump it and nick it, and it's like you swing and miss, and it's just such a frustrating experience, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, last or 2 years ago was one of the first times fishing rainbow through the ice, and we were doing the little sight fishing, and like you said, you watch them just fly in, and it looked like they were just going to annihilate the bait, but they just last second maybe veer off or just bump it with their nose. And I don't know if they're just doing that to investigate, to see what is really there, and then
Sure.
a lot of times they'll circle back and hit it again. But yeah, it's pretty amazing how quick those fish are under the water.
Well, trout definitely love to do the drive-by. I mean, whether it's stream trout on a fly, going up to take a peek before flipping their tail at it and saying no way. Yeah, I mean, that's what they do. So, Carlo with a good suggestion. Having a rubber mallet doesn't hurt on the blades. That's what I carry. Yeah, I've never done that, but I could see where that would be great because as long as you don't bang away at those things to offset them, you're just kind of tapping that ice and snow off. I think that'd be pretty good.
Yeah, definitely not a bad suggestion.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, one of the things I've noticed down here this year, and I fished a lot up by Mille Lacs around Christmas, Whitefish Chain, north central Minnesota, different portions. I noticed it was some of the hardest, clearest, densest ice that I have seen in many years. There was no snow layers. It looked like the kind of stuff if you were constructing the perfect ice cube for a bourbon glass, like that was the kind of ice we were drilling in. And I was happy to be running an ion on that. It just seemed it's almost like it was made to cut in that stuff, right?
Oh yeah, I would agree. I mean, those shaver blades on good clean ice, like I said before, you don't even have to push on the auger. It's like it wants to chew itself through. It's almost like a drill bit where it wants to just pull itself through and break through. So yeah, that's the kind of what we've seen up here too in areas where there is good ice. I mean, we had a hub house set up, had the form foam mats down, and we packed everything up, took the foam mats off, and I mean it was just clear ice all the way through. You could see the bottom of the ice, and I
Nice.
mean that's the kind of ice you want to see.
Yeah, the turbo blades on that Alpha, it's interesting how efficient they are. You don't. It feels like in that ice, it's actually a pretty stiff piece of competition because it is so hard and it is so clear and it is such good quality, but you don't feel it in that auger. And I think that that's the best part about having a speed auger like the Alpha. I call it a speed auger, but I don't think of it as a speed auger. It's fast, but I'm not trying hard. To your point, you're not really pushing down, right? Like you're just letting it eat.
Yeah, and I mean the engineers, they've designed the pitch of the blades and the whole cutting system. So, I think it's probably not that it's fast or, easy to use. It's just so smooth. I mean, everything it's just a smooth process, the smooth breakthrough. I think that's probably, the biggest selling point of an ion, is that it has that smooth breakthrough when you're getting through that last little bit of ice. It doesn't want to bite. It just kind of pulls itself through. You don't have a lot of torque on the auger, and I know they've really fine tuned the RPMs on the Alpha for that reason. It's a smooth cut. You're still getting the speed, but they want it to be a smooth, manageable auger to use, so you're not feeling that extra torque, and when you're trying to fight with an auger getting through the ice.
I I had the chance to see a racing auger at one point years and years ago. Now the thing actually ran on, I think it was like jet fuel of some kind, like 107 octane, and there was a breakaway. Like literally clip this to your clothes. If the auger gets away, it better kill. Otherwise, it's going to kill women and children, and everybody else in the front row will slash their throats out. And it was so crazy to see. But at the same time, I was just thinking, if that thing catches an edge, that's just going to tear your arms out of their sockets, right?
Yeah, and I think we've all been there. You're drilling a hole and it catches on something, or
Sure.
you get a bad piece of ice. But you just don't feel that with the Alpha like you maybe did before with some of the other augers.
Yeah. So you've been to Winnipeg already. You're fishing locally. You're kind of in that Fargo-ish, Detroit Lakes, Otter Tail area. I know you range all over the place. Is
Yeah,
that accurate?
yeah. Reside in Fargo, so get over to the Detroit Lakes area, Otter Tail County a lot. I mean, endless options over there for water, and roam wherever the bite might take me. So I
I I was getting ready to. I was just kind of going through my fish house and everything, and I was reminded that one of the nice things about that auger too is the lights on the bottom. When I'm drilling holes in my wheelhouse, I can actually see what I'm doing because I don't have a generator hooked up yet. A lot of times I'm not running power, and I can just kind of go in, zip what I need, and see what I'm doing. But I was thinking about that because I can work technically from my fish house, but I have to be able to take live stream type meetings, right? And so I am constantly on the search for the unicorn of all unicorns. Maybe you can help me. I'm looking for a lake that I can take my wheelhouse out onto and get good service with my jetpack my mobile hotspot. And so it's weird. It's got to be kind of urban enough, or not urban, but at least near town enough. A decent bite and good cell service. Ready, set, go.
Yeah, I would say that Detroit Lakes area is pretty populated, and usually some decent cell service around there. I know
Sure.
we were doing some streaming ourselves out on the lake this past weekend over in Otter Tail County. So I think let's give it a try. I mean, I work remote too, so as long as my boss isn't watching.
Oh, Kyle Agri just said, Joel, the answer is Starlink. That scared me, Kyle. God knows. Who knows where I'd go and how long I'd stay. I mean, what else do you need if you can get your stuff done? You can fish at the same time. In the fish houses, yeah, I mean, it's like every creature comfort you could imagine. So I might have to take a remote work trip to the North Country, and whether I'm Starlinking it or not, I think the Detroit Lake Series is probably a pretty good bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's meet up and do that and spend some time on the ice. I know Kyle, he had his Starlink down at Deer Camp. He was working
Yeah.
down there, an area that's not known for very good cell service. He's kind of down in the river bottom. So I mean, if he can get reception there, we should be able to get it on pretty much any lake.
So okay, so remote work you can do it anywhere on the ice. There's pretty much nowhere in Minnesota, or not many places in Minnesota, where you can't get a wheelhouse on here in the next week or so, given the cold temps, right? Like up there, it's probably going to be what, -10 tonight or colder? What are they looking at?
Yeah, it's supposed to be, I think, still fairly cold tonight, but then obviously another warm up the next 2 or 3 days, and then they're talking a big cold snap coming again Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So we're getting that again, that roller coaster of temperatures that's probably going to wreak a little havoc on the ice, but hopefully after that cold snap, things will kind of settle out and level off. But yeah, I mean, there's really good ice around here in the areas that I fish, and like you said, after this next week of cold temps, I would think pretty much anyone in the ice belt should be able to get out.
Tell me this, there's going to come a point where the winter doldrums kind of set in, if they haven't already, in some of our favorite lakes. I find that the lakes that get the highest amount of truck traffic and the highest amount of just people beating down that road, it feels like that starts earlier and earlier in some of those lakes. But what do you have right now for daytime bites? Is there a pattern, a presentation, a species that you can go out and feel pretty good about getting bit during the day? Maybe detail that a little bit for us, because I think we're all looking for that kind of situation, right?
Yeah, for me, it's still going to be the panfish, the bluegills and crappies. A couple weeks ago, I was still kind of targeting some of those outside weed edges.
Okay.
Maybe next to where they're going to migrate to come that basin bite. When you get to another couple of weeks and everything's pushed out over the mud. I know this past weekend we were kind of in I wouldn't call it a basin bite, but I wouldn't call it a weed bite. Like it was a little kind of almost a hole next to the weeds, kind of in between the weeds and the main basin of the lake.
Yep.
And so, finding those areas that are kind of transition from that weed edge to that basin, if you can find the fish in there, they're still going to be starting to school up. So if you can find a good number of fish in those areas, they're gonna bite. The area that we fished didn't have any holes on it yet. Those fish, I feel like, hadn't seen much for pressure, and so they were definitely apt to bite.
Oh, cool. What about in the weeds? So you've been doing much fishing in shallower, full weed bed type areas. I just filmed a deal for Northland, and we found a lake that kind of had a good bite like that going down. Is that kind of thing available where you're fishing too?
I would say it is. I'm typically not one that plays around in that shallow bite as much, just because some of the areas that I fish, I can cover a lot more water, and with forward-facing sonar,
Oh
be able
yeah.
to target those fish a little bit easier. You can do it in the weeds, but it's a little bit harder to find those fish. You got to be a little bit more precise and know what you're looking at and decipher what you're reading. But I think those fish, at least in the areas that I'm fishing, are kind of pushing out of that weeds. I got a feeling those weeds are going to start to be dying off. There's probably not a lot of good standing green weeds. So I'm kind of targeting outside of those weeds and towards that basin bite.
That makes sense. Yeah. Of course, everybody's always looking for a daytime walleye bite too. And it just seems like those are real unicorns as you get later on. And unless you're fishing a tannic stained or almost eutrophic lake, which doesn't always hold great populations of walleyes, it can be pretty tough. Although I know there's a lot of private water in that Otter Tail, Fergus, all of that area, all the way over to the Detroit Lakes. And I guess I've always my interest has always been piqued at the private water opportunities around there. Got to know a guy, got to have a connection, got to be willing to knock on doors and be told no. But do those kinds of opportunities exist, or am I cracking into a deep, dark secret that we best not?
No, I think there's some of those opportunities. Even the fabled like walleye rearing ponds, like where the DNR maybe held walleyes, and it's pretty much all private property around it. If you know the right person or can find the right area, those opportunities do exist. They're kind of few and far between, like you said, and it might be hard to chase some of those down. But if you can, it can be one of those pot of gold at the end of the rainbow type bites.
Yeah, everywhere I've fished in the Midwest, it seems like there is a scant couple private water opportunities that if you're willing to put in the work and effort, you can get on. But of course, it takes the same things that it would for hunting. And I grew up a turkey hunter. I know you deer hunt like crazy. And if it doesn't bother you to, do some landowner relationship type work, and you end up becoming friends with these people because they tend to be wonderful folks. And I just that's been something when other things fail, that bite is there for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there was a lake that I fished a couple of times that it was kind of a private lake, but there was just a little corner of state land that butted up to it. Well, you couldn't take anything on there as far as like ATV snowmobile, but if you were willing to walk a half a mile through the brush and the grass and need a waist deep snow, a guy could get back in there. And so there are some of those rare opportunities where if you put in the work, you can get into it. But it's a lot of work sometimes, and there's so many lakes in that Otter Tail, Detroit Lakes area that there's lakes back in kind of the forestry land around kind of that that Waubin, Monoman area that a guy can get in on some of those logging roads and get back into some of those gems too. That again, if you're willing to put in the effort and not afraid to get stuck in the truck and have to shovel yourself out and get back on the trail again. There's some great bites and opportunities there, and you just got to kind of put in the work.
Tell me this. So, I don't know if you've had a chance to use the Onyx Fish app yet. I'm assuming you've used Onyx Hunt to do the public-private for finding some of those tricky ways in. Have you had a chance to do much of that kind of work?
Yeah, not on the Onyx app yet. I downloaded it and just been kind of dabbling a little bit, kind of almost verifying some of what I know, like looking at some of the lakes that I like to target and be like, oh yeah, they are pretty accurate on what I've been seeing. Yeah. So I haven't really spent too much time diving into the depths of it yet. I'm a little afraid to, because I might, get down the rabbit hole, and before I know it, it's 2 a.m. and I need to get to bed. But
you've successfully navigated your way into eyes wide open and bloodshot and no sleep, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I continue to hear from a lot of hunters that have used Onyx Hunt over the years to access weird water bodies like that in the winter, and that's kind of what I was wondering. Although I know for you guys up there, a lot of it is just like a gravel road that if it bumps up against a water edge and you can safely park, it's legal just to dump right in, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the Dakotas. I mean, with the pothole region, if there's a gravel road that runs next to a pond, you can, drive off the right of way and get onto the lake. Or sometimes those roads even end in a lake. There used to be no lake there, and all of a sudden now there's a lake and the road just kind of has a dead end. There's a right of way that can be able to get onto those lakes, and so you can find some of those gems. So I'm definitely looking forward to the Onyx Fish getting all the North Dakotas mapped out and into the app.
Scary. Yeah.
That's
North Dakota is our #1 requested new state. And I'll say stay tuned. It's coming. I can't tell you when, but it's definitely on the slate. Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when I was a lot younger, going out to the Dakotas and just drilling in sloughs, and I've ruined auger blades drilling into a foot deep muck pile. I've also found some incredible perch lakes just off of the great big ones, just off of the Wabays of the world, just off of the dry lakes of the world. And now with forward facing, I want to go do that same thing again, because those little sloughs, like, they'd have a lot harder time hiding now, right?
Yeah, that's one of the episodes we did with fish addictions. We hit the prairie pothole region in North Dakota, and what we did is we basically had a two-man team. One guy would drill, the other guy was following behind him with forward-facing sonar. Walk every 150, 200 feet, scan around. And if you're willing to put in the work, because it's a lot of drilling holes and searching,
Yeah.
and I would say we probably hit 6 lakes, and two of them had good fishing. The other four had, hardly anything. You'd see little perch or different
Yeah.
things, and you'd see a few marks, and it's like, well, maybe no, that's not what we're looking for. And so
Right.
it's definitely a little bit of effort that needs to go into that as well. But you can really be rewarded if you find the right honey hole.
Can't be afraid to fail. I think, yeah, it's funny that you say that. My ratio has rarely been as good as yours was, 1 out of 3. I think the fractions convert there. A lot of times, even locally here over the New Year's holiday, I visited some ponds of my youth, and one of them had I caught a 16 1/4 inch crappie out of one of them when I was a kid, and that pond was open. That pond had open water because it had an aerator, and it was during that warm spell. Another one had filled in with silt completely, and we had 4 feet of water max there, and we caught nothing but little dink bluegills. So yeah, can't be afraid to fail, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we had 6 lakes that we tried, but that was out of the 20 to 30 lakes that we spent time looking at stocking
Sure.
reports and creel
Yeah.
reports and that kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
mean, that helps really narrow it down. You take a list of 20 to 30 lakes, narrow it down to the, 10 most promising and try those, and hopefully out of that you'll be able to find something.
Yeah, you went in smart. That's a good plan. So one of the other reasons I follow you and your channels and all the stuff that you're up to is for the food. Uh, we are kindred spirits. I love cooking. I love wild game preparation, and it seems like you do too. For you, where does that come from? Is that because you just had lots of deer meat running around and you're like, God dang, I got to do some with this stuff? Or has this always been a passion of yours? Give me some info there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been I love to eat good food. And so if I can make food that tastes just as good as going out to a restaurant at home, why wouldn't I do that? I mean,
Yeah.
it's obviously much more economical. I got 2 kids at home now, go out to a restaurant, it's $100 bill before you walk in the door.
I know.
So I've taken that opportunity to kind of refine my skills and learn from other people. There's endless resources now
Huh.
with YouTube videos, and I get a lot of recipes even off of Instagram and TikTok and social media, different things that you can try. And I think once you kind of learn some of the basics, you can, figure out what you like and how you want to maybe tweak it, or, play around with recipes a little bit. And there's obviously been recipes that I've tried that, didn't make the cut, probably won't be back in the rotation, but, it's been one of those things where I bought a pellet grill right at the beginning of COVID. And obviously restaurants were shut down and different things. And I kind of just went haywire with, smoking meat and cooking on the pellet grill. My meat budget definitely went up quite a bit, but we weren't going out to eat. So,
Right, right.
that was, a blessing in disguise for me, because I really, took full advantage of that, and started dabbling into smoking my own venison, smoking my own fish, and doing some of the wild game stuff, and I've really enjoyed that.
Carlo, restaurateur extraordinaire up in Canada, says Anthony sends me photos and videos all the time. I send a few back. His meat game is on point. I would agree. The venison birria tacos definitely piqued my interest. I've had really good birria in a number of cities, including some in Mexico, and it's such a disappointment when you go to a restaurant and it's not good. So I'm always a stickler. Like, I love that. That is a great meal.
Yeah, we did that last week and it turned out really well. And it's actually, I did them once before, did the whole traditional, get the dried peppers,
Yeah.
soak them in the water, blend them with the blender. And this one I actually had seen an advertisement for these birria bombs, just
Yep.
the look like a bath bomb, but it's all the seasonings. You throw it in the crock pot with all the meat. And I was pleasantly surprised how well it turned out. I did add my own twist to it a little bit too,
Mhm.
using beef broth instead of water, added in some orange juice, a little apple cider vinegar, some things that are traditional with the birria recipes, just to bump up the flavor a little bit. And boy, whew, they were pretty good. Probably one of my, I would say, at least top three venison recipes that I've made myself. So yeah,
That's
they were
awesome.
pretty
Uh,
phenomenal.
really good consomme. You want to throw the taco away and just drink that out of the bowl almost. Like it's
Yeah,
so
and that was the one thing too, that the first time I made them, I felt like I didn't have enough of that consomme because when obviously when you make a big batch like this, you're gonna have leftovers. Well, I saved the leftovers, and when I reheated them, there just wasn't a lot of that consomme left. So this time I
sure.
made sure to add extra broth,
Mm,
made extra consomme so that when I go to reheat the extra half that I threw in the freezer,
yeah.
I'll have plenty there.
I have done it with wild turkey legs and have been pleasantly surprised. It's a good way to use up wild turkey legs. And I just end up chopping the meat a little finer than maybe you would with venison because it can be tougher.
Yep.
We got hills down here, and our birds love to run up and down like crazy. And their their legs are, man, they're track stars. They're tight.
Yeah, and I'd seen a little tip too from one of the meat eater recipes where they threw the meat on the flat top and got it a little crispy before
Yeah.
they put it inside of the taco
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. Just adding those additional layers of flavor, the crunch, the texture. Yeah, it was phenomenal. Like I said, I ate way too much. Got in a little bit of a food coma afterwards.
These sound like perfect fish house meals if you have the tools of the trade necessary to get it done out in the fish house.
I know I was
What?
talking to Kyle about that on how we can figure out how to bring one of the Blackstones with so we can take that other half batch that I got left and do it out
Yeah,
on the ice.
that's awesome. Tell me this: where are the inspiration for a lot of your recipes? If you're like me, you go all kinds of places, but maybe do you have a top three, top five, one prime place that you go to look, or is it
I
really
mean,
all
I've
over the place?
Yeah, I would say that it's kind of all over. I mean, one, that sticks out maybe a little bit is kind of the meat eater guys. They've
Yep.
got a lot of recipes. They've done a lot of trial and error, and so I've kind of looked at their recipes and then compare them to maybe just what's out on the internet from a Food Network or wherever type,
Yeah,
and you can maybe kind of see like, well, maybe they're a little bit more on the high end, seasonings and spices, and this is the meat eater side. Where can I kind of find that medium ground where it's things that I have readily available and I don't have to go buy a whole bunch of new ingredients that I'm probably only going to use once or twice.
it's a full mashup. Yeah, I've been looking a lot more. Kenji Alt Lopez, former, I think he was with the New York Times for a while, and then the LA paper. He does some awesome stuff. He reminds me of an Alton Brown of old. It's the food lab, right? Like he's kind of
Mhm.
the mad scientist and puts out some really cool stuff. I looked at the New York Times recipes sometimes. America's Test Kitchen. You ever been there?
No.
That's a cool. It's like totally lab inspired too, where they'll do chili con carne and they'll cut the meat in quarter-inch pieces, half-inch pieces, 2-inch pieces, and then run it through a taste panel. And people help refine the recipe based on tasting recommendations. So kind of fun stuff to nerd out about food, especially in the winter in Minnesota, and especially if it could even go down out on the ice or in a fish house, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Another, inspiration for me is Josh McFadden up there
Oh yeah,
in Winnipeg. He's got some crazy creations with his, walleye cheek lobster roll or burbot lobster roll, different type recipes. And so, I
yeah.
mean, it's always taking that wild game and fish recipes and just taking them to that next level. So, definitely get a lot of inspiration there too.
Well, that's fun. Jeremy Smith is another one. Linder Media. Jeremy's he's a mad scientist behind the cook stove as well. Does a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, I would say anybody that's really passionate about ice fishing is probably in our passion for food. So, a lot of those guys have some pretty good recipes.
All right, so we've covered food, we've covered drilling holes on the lake, we've talked wheelhouses, we've talked bites for panfish, especially. Any big trips coming up? Are you going to go back to Winnipeg, like the
Yeah,
March timeframe? Is when people go.
yeah, definitely be making a trip or two back to Winnipeg. I'm, kind of just planning it based on weather. I mean, it's not fun to go up there. I mean, that's the extreme, right? When you get wind and cold up there, there's nothing to hide behind.
God.
So definitely planning a few more trips up there. Aside from that, don't have anything major planned, but you never know. You get some cold temps. Maybe we'll have to make a trip back out to Fort Peck, or I really want to get back after some Lakers. So maybe that brings me further north into Manitoba. So not really sure what the winter holds, other than a couple of trips to Winnipeg, and then probably a lot of fishing around the Detroit Lakes area. I'd like to get back over to Devil's Lake again. It's always a fun place to venture over to. So
Winnipeg, the last two times I was up there in March, cold front Joel struck, and it felt like a February. It was brutal, man. And we've all enjoyed the March Winnipeg bite when it's like almost t-shirt and you're getting sunburn out there and big walleyes, and it's just a party on the ice. And man, I hope I can do that again soon.
yeah, I hope so too. I mean, last winter I was up there 2 weekends in March, kind of like that same deal. And one was a little bit colder, where we kind of had to fish out of a fish house or warm up and do different things. The other one was, like you said, almost sweatshirt weather. You're kind of hole hopping and being able to run around. So I'm hoping for more of that this winter.
Minoscoop chimes in. Always love to see his comments. Thanks for joining in. What did you guys think of the Care 11 article on forward-facing sonar? Did you get a chance to read that? I only heard about it. I have not read it.
Yeah, I saw the news story, and I think there was about a 3-second clip of forward-facing sonar, and then like 30 seconds of underwater camera. So I'm guessing if people don't understand what forward-facing sonar is, they think it's an underwater camera.
They're even more confused than they were
Yeah,
before.
yeah. So it was one of those things that they threw together a story. It probably got some clicks and some attention. I mean, that's the nature of the news, right? They're just out there to make a story, get clicks, get the views. But it definitely could have been done a lot better. And I would agree to some of the extent where people are against forward facing sonar. It really comes down to the angler. They have to be responsible. It's no different than any other technology we have. I mean, guys could go out and spear walleyes if they wanted to, right? Like,
Yep.
nothing stopping them other than their own moral code to not do it, and
Yep.
the laws and regulations that are out there. So, I mean, if people are abiding by the catch and release and the possession limits and those types of things, it's just another tool in the tool bag.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always felt kind of split on it. I've listened to the old guard wax nostalgic and talk about how, this is going to ruin fishing for all of us and it's going to put undue pressure and the exploitation. But I do agree with you. It's like, yeah, there's many means to exploit fisheries right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Or different ways to kill a deer illegally, or you can do that a lot of ways. I'd say the biggest sticking point I have about it, and full disclosure, I own it. I love it. I've learned a pile from it. I don't think I'll ever not use it, just as a learning tool for nothing else. My only thing that I don't love is that now these things are approaching, $4,000 for the big screen ones with the HDMI outs, and I just hate the idea of the rich guy on the hill only having this, and average Joe anglers like I myself have been for many years. Maybe it's not accessible, and I don't love that part of it. I'd say that's a sticking point for me a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I've used, from the original PS30 to the PS32 to the 34, and
Yeah.
the jump from the original, or PS22, I think that was the original one. The jump from that to the PS32 was a huge jump. I mean, you just had so much better target separation, visibility, clarity. But the jump to the 34, in my opinion, you don't need it if you're just looking at getting an entry level. You don't have to go to the best of the best
Right.
screen, the best
For sure.
transducer. That LVS 32 will catch a lot of fish and teach you a lot about the, like you said, the fish behavior and what you're
Yeah.
seeing, how to target those fish. And so, I mean, that's been my suggestion for people that are looking and, maybe getting into it and they're like, well, $3,000-$4,000. It's like, no, find a LVS 32 on Marketplace or something for, $1,500. You can use it in the summertime. You can throw it in the boat, throw it on the pontoon, kayak, whatever you have. And you'll be plenty happy with that as well.
Yeah, and Lowrance just came out with the $1,000 active target version, the kind of a V1 type product. Yeah, with competition will come cheaper prices too on
Yeah.
top of that. So I think you're right. In Marketplace, it's funny you said that. It's unbelievable what a monster Marketplace has become for buying and selling gear.
Yeah,
I'm sure
absolutely. I
up by
mean,
you guys, you see it. I mean, just tons of things for sale, right?
yeah, I've bought a lot of things. You kind of got to be careful. I mean, I try to sell stuff on there too, and you got to watch out for the scams and different things. And it's with anything else, but there's a lot of deals to be had. I mean, there's guys that want to have that best of the best, and they had LVS 32 for a year, and they're selling it, and they're basically just trying to get out of it what they think it's worth. And so, I mean, there's definitely some advantages to buying used stuff. And I would say the best deals are going to come March, April, when guys don't want to store this stuff for the winter
Yep.
and they want that extra money to put into new gear for the boat or different things for the summer.
Oh yeah.
So there's always some deals to be found then too.
Yeah, just like the best time to sell is early ice when everybody's at fever pitch and just kind of making their plans and getting ready. And yeah, every year I do a fair amount of buying and selling. And as a side note, for Christmas, I got my youngest son a hat that said Marketplace Lowballers because I don't know how old your kids are, Anthony, but my 16-year-old, he makes ridiculous lowball offers that I would be embarrassed to even type on a keyboard.
Yeah, my kids aren't surfing Marketplace yet, but I'm sure it'll come someday.
Just wait, stuff will show up in your yard like old dirt bikes, and just junk will be laying around before you know it. Yeah, you'll yank the internet out of our house, just pull the plug all together or something.
Yeah, for sure.
How old are your kids?
9 and 12. So my daughter's 12 and my son's 9. So, just getting into that. I mean, they're pretty content with their iPad and some Roblox or something right now, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it's coming.
Well, and I bet you out on the ice with the experience that you have and the things you've shown them, I bet you they're starting to become pretty good little helpers running around and just helping move things around. I bet it's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like you said, with that forward facing sonar, they can, experience that, see what the fish are doing. But my biggest thing has always been not to push my kids, further than they want to go. Like we took my son out, we went up to Lake of the Woods. We only got up there for the afternoon, fished like 3-4 hours, which is
Yeah.
perfect for him because he doesn't want to, sit still for too much more than that.
Sure.
Then went out the next morning and fished until, noon, 1 o'clock. And he spent probably 2 hours playing in the snow with his cousins and having more fun doing that. And so
For sure.
it'll come for sure where he wants to sit and stare at the bobber or stare at the rod or stare at the screen and catch the fish. But
Yeah.
it's been more about just having them come with and get out and experience and then get away from that screen time,
Yeah.
and just have some fun out on the ice and the outdoors.
I think that 13, 14-year-old range is about when my kids really started to lock in a little bit more. But I remember a whitefish trip I did with Tony Roach up on Lake Michigan, and he brought his son. And it's so funny, my kids and his boy, like Robbie, they were just running around the ice jackassing, like knocking each other over. And God, it was just the best for them. When we were catching whitefish solid, they could have carried so what, a little silverfish, what do I carry?
Yeah.
They couldn't wait to just go out and knock each other around on the ice.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring a football with, or, the boys, they were playing with the shovels, building little snow forts and different things, just kids being kids.
That's awesome. Well, I don't have a whole lot else for you, Anthony. It's been great learning more about you. Things I've always known, questions I've had of you and what you do and how you go about your business out there on the ice. Tell me, are you and the Brewer Agri guys? Do you get out now and again too? Who are your fishing buddies in the fishing industry out there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Fishing with, I was actually out on the ice with Kyle and Scotty this past weekend. We were doing some stuff, some promotional stuff for both Eskimo and Ion. So that was a lot of fun.
Sweet.
Got a lot of guys locally that I get out fishing with, and then still hanging out with the Fish Addictions guys when I can. So that's kind of the crew, but always down to fish with new people. It was really fun. I know you had Blake on the Ion Live the other day. He was up this neck of the woods. I don't know if it was last year, or the year before. Met up with him and spent some time out on the ice. So that was a lot of fun. But overall, just I'm looking to get out on the ice, and I don't really care who's with me as long as they're
Right.
willing to split the gas bill.
Yeah, that's right. Split some gas, drill some holes, have some fun. Nobody likes it if you're really, really good though. So like I gotta man, I went fishing with Key Kong a couple of years ago. That guy, madman. He is so good as
Yeah.
an angler. One of these guys that just doesn't miss bites, and we all have friends like that, and all of us care a lot, and we're pretty decent at our trade because we're into it, right? But everybody's got that one buddy who's just he's a fish hound, right?
Yeah, I might get a little locked in sometimes. I know I took a buddy up to Winnipeg, and he's like, "Boy, you're an animal. I mean, when there was fish, you were hole hopping and jumping and drilling new holes." And he's like, "I was just getting tired watching you." So sometimes I might get a little carried away, but I think that's the one thing with forward-facing sonar. It there's so much visibility to what's around you, and for me, it's just hard to sit and wait and have them come to you. I mean, I was telling this little tidbit to Kyle, and I don't want to let any secrets out of the bag for Winnipeg, but we were drilling some holes around where we were fishing, and I'd see a fish on forward-facing sonar going towards one of those holes. I'd run over there real fast, put the hook down the hole, and then actually run back and watch it on my sonar, so I didn't have to carry it with me, jigging
Wow.
from like 20 feet away. I
Yes.
caught 3 or 4 fish doing that.
That's crazy. If you hooked up with a big one, that could be a little dicey, huh?
Might be a little dicey, but it was,
Fun.
again, trying to just pass the time. I wasn't going to just wait for that fish to come, circle back or something, but
Right, right. That's
yeah.
slick. That's pretty smart. Yeah, we get better and better at how we do these things. I've had a chance to actually herd crappies a little bit with augers and
Yep.
sunfish. Some of these smaller ponds that we fish, it's interesting. Everybody's like, well, it's shooting fish in a barrel. And it's like, yes and no. Some of those smaller lakes and ponds, they're not used to any pressure at all. So when somebody's drilling a hole on that, those fish must think it's like the end of the world or something, right?
Oh, absolutely. I've
Oh,
probably done just as much damage with forward-facing sonar trying to stay on a school of fish. They're just, as soon as you touch that auger down, they're running 20, 30 feet, and you're like, oh, now they're over here. And it's like, sometimes you just have to drill a couple of holes and wait for them to settle back in, especially if you've got any sort of structure that's going to hold those fish, whether it's
yeah.
a point or some weeds or something that those fish they were there for a reason. They want to come back there. So yeah, you can definitely do more damage with that if you're trying to run around and chase things than if you were just sit put.
Yeah, the scoop says observing bait fish with forward facing is kind of interesting, gives us new perspective of how the bait and predators interact. And I'll take it to another level and say that that's panfish too, because panfish are bait species in many respects. And the best luck I've ever had with forward facing sonar and drilling on those fish and getting them to stay is if they kind of got a wall of weeds behind them, like you said, or structure to kind of make them feel a little bit more comfortable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Same would go for, basin bite. If you can push them to the edge or that corner where it starts to shallow out, they don't want to go past that. So sometimes you can kind of herd them towards an edge or, any sort of structure that's going to maybe hold them in place for a little bit longer. Because yeah, there's a lot of times where I'll be chasing fish and you'll get on the school, but you only catch 1 or 2 before they've moved that next 10, 15, 20 feet. And then you're drilling more holes. And sometimes you try to get in front of them, and then you do that, and then they move the other direction. So
My aunt said last I fished with her, pretty soon we'll be shooting them with laser beams. I thought that was pretty funny.
yeah, it's crazy to think what might come, and I'm just waiting for it to be where it's like like Jay Siemens had that video where he had the VR glasses and everything's just looking in front of you, and you almost just like X-ray vision looking through the ice or something.
Feels video game-ish, but hey, I'm here for it, at least to try it out, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for the time, Anthony. Appreciate you carving some some time out of your busy schedule, and hope to catch up with you on the ice. Maybe I'm going to do this work out of the fish house routine. I'll see if it's a good gig if you can get it, and I'll see if I can abuse it just to the edge of its fullest potential.
Yeah, as long as the work's getting done, right?
That's right. Who can care? All right. Well, thanks for everybody joining us. We appreciate it. It's been Ion Live featuring Anthony Kleinwachter and myself, Joel Nelson. This is the Night Bite signing off. Have a great night, everybody.